So the first one I would like to talk about is pets in our game. So as a player or DM or GM, what are your thoughts on including pets in the adventuring party? So in addition to that, tell me about a memorable pet that was in your D&D or TTRPG game. But before we get started with our first answer, I did run a poll on this subject on my community tab at my YouTube page, and the results were kind of interesting. 25% said pets are fun. We always seem to have at least one pet in our group. Going with that is 7% that said we love adopting pets, but they don't live long. At 29%, they don't care either way. 22% are not a fan of pets. And 17%, they don't really have a lot of experience. And with regards to pets, I'm thinking more along the lines of animals that you adopt, usually non-combat. And that differs a little bit from animal companions and familiars. So I'm going to go clockwise. I see I'm on the top of the chain there. So the first one that's going to be up is going to be Fred from How to D&D.
I guess for me, when it comes to combat, I kind of feel like there's going to be a few more restrictions necessary. One for me is a dungeon master, because I've got to manage that, because the more people who are running something, like if you're running your character and a pet as well, it's a bit more complicated, and then you got to change encounters and so forth. As a player, I still also get annoyed by that sort of thing, because I've got to wait while somebody deals with their pet as well in combat. For me, ultimately, I say yes to animal companions, animal pets, familiars, yes, but it does depend on the situation. I think the best time to use familiars, I'm never going to stop that, because it's a spell, right? It's there, right? It's going to happen. It's not like everybody's going to have the familiar spell unless they all came with wizards, which has happened to me. The best time is like when there's a small group and you just don't have enough players. Like then I encourage people to have either an animal companion to incorporate into combat, or for other utility features, or have some sort of familiars really aren't really useful in combat, because they've got one hit point and they can be killed pretty easily. So for me, I like it when people use pets, animal companions and familiars in non-combat ways, but if it's combat focused, then I'm probably going to limit it so that there isn't too many people taking turns in any given time in a combat, because I don't want to have 6 players and 6 pets. That's not really for me. Okay, too much work. The story I have is I was very foolish, and I decided, because somebody had found a dragon egg and decided to hatch it, and her character sat on that egg for many sessions, and eventually I realised it had to hatch, because they would go to more and more absurd lengths to get that thing to hatch. So we wound up with a baby dragon in the campaign, which turned out to be highly amusing, very powerful, and in the end, actually, the player, she decided not to take the baby dragon into battles, and the baby dragon was just used to hang out in the camp, primarily because the baby dragon was better than her character. So it wasn't just messing with everybody else at the table, it was messing with her, and she would say, like, I really like the baby dragon, but it's kind of poo-pooing on everybody else, so I'm just going to leave it for utility function and hanging out in camp and generally other stuff. So that's fine with me. She actually found a good place. That was my story. So for those of you who are wondering why I had a video on my channel that said how to hatch a baby dragon, it's because I've actually had to deal with that and had baby dragons in my campaign.
Now, you said that her character sat on the egg for a long time. I mean, was she a certain type of character, or is it just like, this is what I do, I'm going to be here for a few hours, give me a few minutes, or...
She was a pixie sorcerer who accidentally got turned into a vampire as well. So a pixie sorcerer vampire. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, it is probably the absolute worst combination for a dungeon master to have to deal with. That's just the nature of things. 4E was a crazy time. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, sounds like I cracked the shell on a whole different topic there, maybe at another time. So I like it. How about you, Juce? What are your experience with pets?
Well, first of all, Fred clearly went into my brain and took the story I was going to tell almost verbatim, but I'm going to tell it again anyway. But before I get into that, I am 100% the yes and or the yes but dungeon master. If I have somebody in my party who wants to have some sort of pet, I will allow it. Now, as a DM, when your party has things like this, to me, this is just fuel. This is emotional fuel. This allows me to hurt them at their core when I really want that, storyline beat. You know what I'm saying? So it's an extra thing that they have to worry about keeping safe, protecting, giving resources to, things like that, that normally they wouldn't have to worry about. With that, you have typically you get pets from things like I think the urchin background gives you a mouse, for example, in D&D 5e. I think there's some other things. Heck, if you're a noble knight, you might have some human pets as squires, that just run around carrying your stuff, right? So a lot of different things like that don't get involved in combat. Now, in my Tyranny of Dragons campaign that we stream on my channel, we've been running this campaign for a couple years now. Very early in the campaign, and by the way, there might be spoilers here. If you're playing Tyranny of Dragons or planning on it, pause for the next 5 minutes. In the beginning of that campaign, though, the party goes to a raider camp, and there are dragon eggs there. And half the party thought it was a terrible idea to take an egg, and they wanted to fry up eggs and omelets, and it was a running joke for multiple sessions. My wife, who plays in that campaign, wanted to take one of these massive eggs. She's I think a halfling, a Ghostwise halfling, druid. So she ended up taking this egg and carrying it around everywhere. They named it Egbert. They disguised it when they went into towns so people didn't know they had a dragon egg. They put clothes on it, dressed it up. It was hilarious. They had to go through Baldur's Gate with this thing. They had to protect it against a frog hemoth that is not part of the module that I threw at them on the river heading to Baldur's Gate. Like all sorts of fun stuff. Eventually, the egg did hatch, and it has not been a factor in combat, even though I've given it a stat block. We let one of our donators to the stream say what type of dragon is. It's a red and black crossbreed dragon, which I thought was pretty cool. So we incorporated that. Its name is Saffron because they wanted originally to cook it up and eat it. So it's now named Saffron. And this dragon has been the most important thing is they've been trying to keep it fed. But in the caravan to Waterdeep and stuff, they had to keep it hidden. It was in a wagon. It was in a bag. It was eating everything, chewing on things. I was able to be very disruptive with it as the DM here and there and cause little things to happen that were a blast. Actually, it's funny because we've had some party members that have left the game, and so their PCs have become villains in the campaign. And the last session, between the last session and the one that we are playing next week, this dragon has gone missing in Waterdeep. So I've warned them that if the dragon is ever seen in these places, it's probably going to be killed on sight. So it's been a great part of the campaign. Tyranny of Dragons campaign, not the greatest, but the little things we've added to it on the side, including pets and other stuff, has made it a lot of fun. So again, I say use pets. It's going to be very memorable, and you won't regret it.
How big is Saffron?
At this point, it's still a baby. I think it's only a couple months old.
Okay,
so it's still like 100 and some pounds. Like it's not something you just carry around at this point. Now, when it hatched, I had it real small so it could fit in a backpack. Okay. It now is pretty much at that point where it's outgrown that.
Well, I think the first place to look is the yawning portal, and if it's not there, maybe have a few drinks and look again.
They've been at the yawning portal.
Great, I love that. Very good, very good. How about you, Mr. Welch? What do you have for us regarding pets?
Well, usually my players don't take pets. They because when we go adventuring, pets have a lifespan of about one fireball. And they don't, they will go through critters like nobody's business. So they just anything that is going to be a pet gets left behind at the adventure. That being said, I had a couple of players realize that you could take a lot of dogs for pets, and dogs get massive bonuses for spotting. So they would be taking their dogs along with them to ride to the dungeon, and then they would camp out, and the dogs would have watch. Because, of course, whenever the monster came up, the dogs would hear them long before anybody else would. But the one character we had in Mystara, they have this little bitty dragon. It's with a draconic creature. It looks like a dragon. They come in every color the dragons come in. It's about the size of a house cat. It's about as smart. And she fell in love with it. She had to collect the whole set. So she became, so the crazy cat woman, she was the crazy pocket dragon woman. But she didn't tell anybody. Nobody else knew that she was collecting these pocket dragons. She would go out and find one, and she was like collecting Pokemon, trying to get the ruby pocket dragon, get the red pocket dragon, get the blue pocket dragon, the jade pocket dragon. And she got home. They got to her house one time, and there was like 15 pocket dragons. She was one short of the whole set. And they're all like looking at her, and she's like, "Don't judge me." But yeah, as far as taking them out on adventures, no, the pets die way too fast in most campaigns, and I have a hard time working around it. And I play with veteran players for the most part, but even when there's like younger players, there's always at least one person that's been around the block a few dozen decades. And yeah, they don't. So they keep the pets primarily as a role playing tool, and you're not going to see a dog or a cat set foot in a dungeon. If they're going to go there, then they're going to have some degree of survivability.
You know, I had really never thought about having dogs as watches at night. That is a fantastic idea. I really like that because all of my characters want to get a full 8 in. So if we can have a few dogs that, you know, along with this, that would be an awesome, amazing idea.
Just roll 10 dice and see which dogs spot it because of their enhanced senses.
All right. How about Kevin from D&D Homebrew? What do you have for us regarding pets?
Well, I'm the same thing as Mr. Welch. My players traditionally only had animals. I guess what Fred was talking about, you know, if you count animal companions or familiars and this sort of thing, they always wanted them to be operational, right? And the idea of just having a pet, exactly, you know, what you were saying, they die very quickly. You know, you don't have a little cat or something. What happened to me, I was off in Poland for 4 years teaching, and I came back to the United States and started playing 5e, and I went to a local game store, and there was a woman playing, and she had a pet ocelot with her that she kept on a little string, and so I thought, I wonder what the operation, I wonder what, you know, does it scout out ahead? And it was like, no, it's just her pet, you know, and it would sort of run off, you know, when things happen. So the GM allowed this pet to be alive, but again, I thought to myself, traditionally, when we used to play, pets were just something you left at home because they would just get killed, right, in a realistic setting. One time, I was playing a game, I was running this world, they were in this archipelago world where everything had all been flooded, and there were these little mountaintops, and you had to go down, they got trapped on this plane. There was this ancient civilization, these color gods, all this color magic that I had created. And just to add atmosphere, they were sort of unfreezing things, and they unfroze this, was cobalt blue cat, like the size of like a bobcat. But I didn't have it any values and everything. And they just had this thing coming along, and they kept waiting for it, you know, to have some ability. But I just left it as a cat, as this kind of big cat. Well, here were these hardened, you know, war gamer GM, and they started to really like this cat. I also, at the time, my wife had this Maine Coon cat. I don't know if you ever heard of those. They have this trilling they do, brrr, brrr, and all these noises they make. So I had this cobalt cat that just ran along with them, and I would have it dash off and a little unrealistically survive, you know. And it was the only time really a pet per se, you know. And eventually they freed the cobalt color guy, and he took his cat back, right? And it was to a little bit of an advantage. But again, in terms of just running with pets, no, I don't mind. As I said, I saw it done in that campaign that I ran at the game store, but typically, no, we usually don't use pets.
How about Bear from the Bear Bard? What do you have for us?
So, I don't have a ton of experience in games where people had pets, not like on purpose. I have nothing against them. The few times I've run it and people have had pets, my one rule is just that you have to remember your pets. You know, I'll do what I can, but my brain can only keep track of so much. So, you know, you want a cat? Cool. That's on you. Also, you know, there's also like the, you know, don't bring something that's squishable into combat usually, because that's a bad idea. The best example I've seen used it though, well, first off, there's one where I tried to hatch a green dragon egg, just because I thought it was cool. But you know, I was a halfling, so I'm trying to carry this big egg around, and the rest of the party said no, they wouldn't help me. So I wasn't happy about that. but one guy used the beggar background, I think it was the urchin, and so he had a mouse, and so he made a goal to gather more mice, and so he would use them not in combat but out of combat, and so he actually solved a couple puzzles and stuff because he took he had a lot of high animal handling, and he wasn't a druid, so it was just one of those things like he spent time training them. And so he used them a lot for different things. I remember he used them to steal. He used them to get through and scout and that kind of thing. So it was a lot of fun seeing him use it for those purposes. That's the game I was playing in. But yeah, I have nothing inherently against them as long as you remember them and don't get too annoying about it. That's really the biggest thing. It's like if you just drop the whole game because you want to have this zebra pet, That's really the big thing. Is just keep it under control, and I'm cool with it.
Nice. Isn't that like our first inclination? We find a dragon egg, we want to keep it.
I tried so hard. I tried everything. I'm like, okay, well, here, I made like wheels on a cart thing.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do everything, and then I missed one session. Like, yeah, we pushed the egg off a cliff. I'm like, y'all cold-blooded.
Yeah.
Wow. Nice. I like that story. And how about you, Denny? What do you have for us? Pets.
So I thankfully haven't had to contend too much with the issue of pets. It mostly has been in the form of familiars. I'd be fine with pets in my game. It's definitely not something I'm going to be like, there's a wandering pet salesman and like, here's your opportunity to buy pets. I am not going to be the one to put it forward to my players. Like, if they want something that is, a mortal animal, they can come to me with that. Like, if they want a frog or a weasel or something like that, I'd be down for it. Or a dog. I'd probably talk to my players about pets if it ever came up and be like, all right, one for the group. Got it? Because when it comes to pets, that's an NPC. You know who's in charge of that? That's this guy. So, you can have your party mascot. I don't want a second party made out of animals unless we're going to create some sort of secondary campaign spin-off where everybody is suddenly playing their pets, which could be hilarious. I'm also not a big fan of the concept of killing innocent animals in my games, so I'd be more easy to sell on it, especially if they go I just want something small. I'd be like, great, they're invincible, they're going to be in your backpack or in your pocket, and they just for some reason miraculously survive everything. If they're a bit bigger, it's a bit harder to kind of make that work, because they're out in the open, things are hostile, and I gotta roleplay as the DM. But I love pets. They're adorable. It adds great aesthetic into a game. But similar to what Bear Bar was saying, they got to remember them and they got to take care of them. Because this brings up a story about a familiar in one of my games where our wizard was like, oh, I've got an owl for my familiar. I was like, that's great. I never remembered the owl. They never remembered the owl. And we had 3 years of this campaign where we're like, didn't you have an owl this whole time? We're like, oh yeah. Huh. I guess they were there. So yeah, it was an unfortunate, somebody had a pet, but we completely just disregarded them. Nobody cared for it. Another player in that campaign, however, did have an Almirage familiar, and that was so much more fun to interact with because we flavored it like it had telepathic communication with its owner. So I got to do a bit of a Jersey accent as he helped his detective owner with solving some crimes and stuff. So it had a bit more of a personality. It stuck out to me. The closest thing to a pet that isn't a familiar in the campaign I'm currently running, our Wild Magic Sorcerer in a Wild Magic Surge produced a small mushroom humanoid. So not quite a pet, but they now have this foot tall mushroom man, and they're like, why are you here? And the party has since become divided on his existence, hoping that he would be gone by the next morning. He's not. He's still with them. And the part of the group that is so attached to this thing has told me, I will become a villain in this campaign if this guy dies. And I'm like, he can die. He is mortal. So this is on you. And we will see how the adventures of Grobo go from here.
So I'm waiting for the time when, with your one pet rule, that they find this other animal, like, man, it sure be great to take this along with us. And they have to choose between this other animal and the mushroom person and just see the party split. That could be like a whole session just arguing back and forth. Very
I have no idea how that would play out, but I'm awaiting that conversation. I'll be sure not to present them with any dragon eggs.
You also bring up a good point, too. It seems like a lot of times pets are forgotten until they're needed. You could go those 3 sessions and all of a sudden they find themselves like in a jail or whatever. And they're like, oh, wait, I got my pet rat. He's going to go steal the keys. Or my owl is with us. I'm like, what? Oh, shoot, I forgot all about that.
But Wally, you forgot. You know, three sessions passed, and like 3 sessions ago, the whole party got hit by a fireball. So that little rat must have got killed in that fireball. Like, you know, I think you should. I like having pets and familiars and animal companions in my campaign, but I will kill them all if I can. It's me, you know. Kill a pet and not a player character.
Same here.
Yeah.
It totally gets a message across.
Yeah, I can just see you guys cheering when Hedwig died in Harry Potter. It's like,
Dude, I cheer when my player characters die. Like, my own character dies. Like, I love it when there's character death. I love it. It makes it so much more tense and interesting.
The minute they know they can die, things take a new edge, you know?
Yeah, they don't even have to be super cautious after that, but like they definitely think more, you know, and they definitely consider running and they consider, you know, tactics ahead of time rather than waiting till the last moment. Like, it's great.
I would consider killing an NPC or even a player before I killed their pets.
So with regards to pets in my game, I actually like them. If I were a player, I like the freedom to be able to include something. I think one of you mentioned the urchin background with a pet mouse that you can have, and I had a necromancer at one time that had the urchin background, and my mouse was a little zombie mouse. It was dead, but I still talked to it like it was alive, and I got that from the urchin background. So I do like giving the freedom for that. As a DM, I love having at least one pet in the game because it's my way of adding humor. In my Waterdeep Dragon Heist game that I'm running now, my brother picked a gnome and he has this speak with animals or do some kind of, they understand little things or whatnot. And there's this big fat rat that was in Trollskull Manor. They took over Trollskull Manor. There's this fat rat. Now, every morning that he wakes up, this little fat rat is eating a saltine, watching him sleep. And as soon as the gnome wakes up, he's a little gassy little rat, and then he kind of scurries off. So I like doing that, being able to include humor and being able to, if the party's lost, if there's a secret door that I really want them to find and they have a pet mouse or a pet cat or something, they may go over and sniff at the door or, find something like that or knock over something important. That's a fun thing to do too. Maybe they have a pet cat and they're in the alchemist lab and the cat's like, oops, and knocks over something that they needed. And now they have to, continue forward. But one of my favorite pets of all time happened in my previous Dragon Heist game. And you can find this in my book, Journal of Puzzle Encounters. And actually, Fred highlighted it in his video. And the wizard in that campaign had found a jar of purple jelly. Now, this was played by Nerzigal, Stephen Williams. He writes a bunch of DM's guide that are on Drive-Thru-RPG, and it was a randomly determined magic item out of his book is how it started. And it was just supposed to give him a +1 to his spells as long as he had this jar of jelly and carried it around. I was like, you know what would be cool is if that thing was alive. It was like an actual mini ochre jelly. So he was sitting there once we ended the camp session. I'd be like, you're feeling something close to you that is hungry. So it communicates with him through emotion. And then he let the jelly out of the jar, and that thing eats everything now. So, and it perches up on his shoulder, so this ochre jelly will climb up there And it gets hungry. Like when they kill something that the ochre jelly wants, we call him Blobby. And when Blobby eats something, or Blobby sees something that he's hungry for, then his stomach will growl. And Miralith is the wizard's name. He knows to, help him down and let him eat whatever. And when he does this, he gains abilities. So Blobby had a little bit of a feast of a doppelganger, and now can imitate anyone that he sees. He's still purple and in jelly form, but he'll be sitting on the shoulder and be talking to an NPC, and Blobby decides to make fun of him. So he'll take the shape of that NPC and kind of just mimic their actions. And Blobby ate the pet goldfish at one time. They had a goldfish. Blobby ate it. And now Blobby's got a swimming speed. Blobby ate part of a molten spider. Now he has fire resistance. So it was just this fun pet to have. And it'd be just like... they'd be doing something. I was like, oh yeah, by the way, Blobby's not on your shoulder. It's like, Blobby! and going to see what Blobby's at. So that is my experience with pets. And I like that one so much, I even put that magic item in my book. So
something else that's worth noting is a lot of times when player characters have like the ability to speak with animals, for example, I would rather they're speaking to their pet than the random squirrel that's been sitting here, because now I got to bullshit something that the squirrel saw or didn't see. I would much rather it be the pet in their pocket than the random wildlife or the plants. Speaking with plants, God, that spell kills me.
Hey, you're blocking my light.
I've only had chance to talk as a pet a plant once, and I loved it because I just made tree puns the entire time, and it was amazing. I've never had to act like a pet though, not once.
I'm sure that shut them down from ever speaking with plants again, right?
Basically, because I also did the slow tree beard. Yes.
Yeah, I would always think that plants have some weird, very slow process of thinking, right? Such that, and the sun is here and the earth. The idea, and of course, you have the spell, so you're always like, but what does a plant know?
Why do treants talk so slow? I think you hit it on the head. Every time a plant speaks, it seems we're like really slow.
Maybe it's from that. Maybe from the treant. That's my instinct is not to have them chatty and conversate. It's a plant. It's a shrub.
Plants in my world, they have coffee. They're like, yeah, hey, what's going on, man?
I have a player character that's playing a treant in one of my games, actually, and he speaks with plants pretty frequently. So I'm just like, I gotta plan like what he's gonna know, like almost everywhere he goes.
He should have a pet sapling.
Yeah. He's befriended the plants in multiple places where they are just basically bored sitting in like a courtyard. And so he went inside and took pictures off the wall and brought them outside for the plants to see.
All right. So that was our discussion about pets. Let us know your experiences. Do you like pets in your game other than animal companions or familiars, or is it just animal companions and familiars? Tell us about a favorite pet from your adventures in the comments below.